you know what, Mom? I don't think I'm really scared of failing. And I was like,
Like what? Record scratch.
like, yes. And I thought
Wow.
to myself, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And she's looking at me like you're getting way too excited over this. Like, cause she was like, I guess I'm not scared to fail, but she was still unsure if that was like a good thing or a bad thing. So I have this whole thing now because I just assumed that's what parenting is. Hi, I'm Jen.
Hey, I'm Suzanne.
Today we are talking about letting your kids fail and how if you have a problem with it, you might want to look inward. Dun, 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 dun.
I would have no idea about what we're talking about. What?
So it came to my attention. My daughter was preparing for a speech for school, and she was reading it to me. And lo and behold, in said speech, she starts talking about a time in middle school where she had to go up to her teacher and discuss a project. So the backstory is she had worked on this project. She likes to get good grades. That's her jam. She thought she had crushed this project. She turns it in and she comes back and she got like a B- or something. And she was like, oh my gosh. So she comes home and tells me she got a B-. And I was like, well, did you talk to your teacher? She's like, no. And I said, okay, well, you need to talk to your teacher. And she's like, well, so-and-so's mom's just going to email her. And I was like, well, that's not what we do. And she's like, what do you mean that's not what you do? And she's like, why can't you email her? And I was like, because I will email her after you have done your job. You need to start learning to advocate for yourself. And, let's talk about it. So anyways, long story short, she realizes that she needs to go speak to the teacher because she has no idea why she got such a low grade. So she musters up the courage. She's very shy. She's like me when she was younger, or when I was younger, very shy. So she musters up the courage to go ask her teacher. And the teacher says she missed some whole section. Well, there was some miscommunication on whatever computer programs they do. These kids get all their assignments on computer programs that I barely know how to use.
Yep.
And she had missed a whole section. And then, of course, she had spoken to the teacher and said, well, is there anything I can do? And she comes home, she gets in the car, and she's like, guess what? I talked to Miss So-and-so. I forgot a whole section, and she's smiling. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, I forgot this whole section. I was like, oh, how did you forget a section? She's like, well, I thought it was here, and she put it here, and she's going to let me turn that part in, and I'm going to get an A. And I was like, well, how does that make you feel? And she's like, well, I'm going to get an A. And I'm like, that's not what I'm asking you. How does that make you feel? And so what she realized was she advocated herself. I said, so-and-so, her mom emailed or whatever. And she said, yeah. And then the teacher ended up calling her up anyways to discuss it. And I said,
ended up calling who? The student?
kid up.
Yeah.
So she had been up there. And then apparently later on, the teacher had called up the other kid who's the mom had emailed about it. And to me, that was just part of, I always thought that she needs to advocate for herself. She needs to learn how to do it. And that me as the mom, I always got your back. If that teacher is going to come at you with something that makes no sense, then we'll have another discussion. And if I need to get involved, I 100% will. But it's not my job to figure out why you didn't get a good grade. It's your job to figure out why you didn't get a good grade.
Yeah.
And there's got to be something to it. Or, hey, we also had other situations where it's subjective. It's like English. And the teacher's just like, yeah, you get a B. I thought it was an A. And not just because she's my kid, but I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so good. I never did anything like that in high school. And then she gets a B. And that's where you have to have the discussion of some teachers necessarily don't like you. They don't like your style of writing. They don't.
Yeah.
I mean, you still have to have the discussion. But if they're like, yeah, you got everything. You didn't miss a section. And I still think you got a B. Then it's like, yeah. So it doesn't always work out to your advantage to talk to the teacher. So she's learned that both, but having the closure and the ability to go have these conversations, as she was saying in her other speech that started this whole thing. And I remember sitting there on the couch and I'm like, oh my gosh, in my mind, it was so small and it was back then. And that's just our family rule. But I didn't realize how much it really impacted and how much it impacted her, that she's still telling the story. and not from like a trauma from
Yeah.
a look what she was telling the thing of things I've overcome.
Hmm.
And for her, it was like shyness and stuff. And so that was what the speech was about. And then it got to me thinking, and I was like, well, what other stuff do you think that I've made you do, right? That
Yeah.
you think that have helped you? And she was like, gosh, she's like, the sports stuff. We've obviously talked a lot about that on the podcast, the different sports things that have happened with coaches or players or she was like, yeah, that's really helped me. And then she's like, and then I did theater, and then I did, she's done a lot of things where she could have easily quote unquote failed. And so she's like, yeah, you know what, mom, I don't think I'm really scared of failing. And I was like,
Like what? Record scratch.
like, yes. And I thought
Wow.
to myself, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And she's looking at me like, you're getting way too excited over this. Like, cause she was like, I guess I'm not scared to fail, but she was still unsure if that was like a good thing or a bad thing when we were having it was just a genuine conversation on the couch, sort of out of nowhere. So I have this whole thing now because I just assumed that's what parenting is. And like in your mind, how when you do something, you just assume everybody else does it.
Sure. Yeah, for
But
good or
now,
bad.
yeah, exactly. For all the things, dysfunction or non. I don't know about you, but I realize that is, especially our generation, is not raising their kids that way. They think they are, like they tell themselves, like, oh, yeah, I allow them to fail. And, you do that whole, like, oh, yeah, that's not me. That's not me. But then when I watch what's happening, I hear what's happening, and then I have conversations with both my clients and my friends, I'm like, oh, wow, this is coming from somewhere else. But before we get to there, like, what has been your experience with letting the kids fail?
Yeah, well, I was definitely one of those moms who
Yeah.
was like, oh,
Yeah.
I let my kids fail. And then subsequently realized, like, no, you don't. And I realized part of that was absolutely because it was a reflection of me, right? If my kids
Yeah.
are not doing well, then it's a
Yes.
poor reflection on me. And I guess the example that was popping into my head when you were talking was my son just like in middle school just really wasn't turning in assignments at times. And
Mm-hmm.
I was all over him checking Canvas and like, checking the
The,
computer
the,
program.
the
And you
computer
see,
program.
yeah, and
Yes.
you see all the memes being like,
The
and the kids,
red.
yeah, and you see all the memes where the moms are like, he said he turned it in and they just haven't graded it yet, or it just
Yes.
hasn't come up in
Yes.
the computer
Yes.
program yet. Like
Yes.
we were having those exact same conversations and I was all over him. And I was like, hey, you need to be doing this and this and this. And then probably like a year or two ago, I was like, Suzanne, you are not letting him fail. And if you want him to fail, like you don't have that much longer with him. And
Yeah.
if he doesn't learn how to fail on his own, then are you doing your job as a parent? And so
Mm-hmm.
then I completely just had told him, like, you know what? We're going to let you do it your way. Let's see how it goes. Because, of course, him and I's relationship was being severely impacted
Of course.
because
Yeah.
I was all over him about his grades. And then I watched, and yeah, it didn't work out so well. And I watched him fail, and it was painful for my husband and I.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like, oh, I'm a bad mom. And, what are these teachers going to think of me? And then he started to realize he was failing, and he was like, oh. And now,
Because he can
miraculously,
actually see it, right? Like before you were just telling him what was gonna happen.
yes, which is just more like we say, like, especially as they get older, it's just like your mom. And if you can't see us, like on our YouTube channel, you can see me like just like with your hand, like yapping, like, right? Like a
Yapping.
mom just
Yeah.
yaps at me. And he wasn't seeing it, the failure for himself. So finally, when I took it off my hands off and had to suffer and be like, and I realized
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, he found the solution himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he started to self-correct and he came to
Mm-hmm.
me and was like, hey
Mm-hmm.
mom, like how do we pull this back together? So, and then
Mm-hmm.
same thing with sports. Like, hey, the result is not for me. Like whatever the
Mm-hmm.
input is, if you want to go to all this training and you want to do these things, I'm here for it. I will take you and I will commit with you. But unless that's something you want, like I'm no
Right.
longer going to be the one that's going to push you into all of this stuff and make
No.
sure you do it. Instead, do it yourself and you're either going to fail or not. But I'm here to support you and love you. That's my job.
Yes. Yes. Yes, and that you like you just took it because that's exactly where I was going with this. Is
Oh.
because what I realized is like these moms and parents in general is like they cannot handle their kid failing because they can't handle failing.
Correct.
So because they're uncomfortable, and we're using failing like this is like, life or death people. These are like grades in high school, middle school. And I'm sorry, I know somebody just lost their mind in their car right now because I said grades are not important. They are not. I will die on this hill. We can just agree to disagree. But what parents do say is so they'll tell me specifically about grades or sports, those two specifically.
Yeah.
Oh, but I can't let them do that because if they get a bad grade, then they're not going to get into college.
Yep.
I'm sorry, what? Yeah. Okay. So, and now I'm putting their future at risk. No, no, you're putting their future at risk because, and I am on a soapbox right now, because you are not teaching them to fail and to figure out how to self correct, as you
Yeah.
said. You are not going to be there forever.
Yeah.
And they can't be calling their mommy because things are going sideways in college or things are going sideways at their job. Now, if you've taught them how to self correct and how to come to you for ideas to help them come up with ways to solve solutions, that's a very different conversation than, mommy, you need to fix this, versus like, hey, mom, I had this situation at work. This is what I'm thinking of doing.
Yeah.
Can I get your perspective? Like, I'd really like to talk this out with you. Like, those are two very different conversations versus, mommy, fix this. And you're like, this is what you're going to do. I'm going to call your boss and I'm going to tell them you're sick today. Like, this actually happens in real life. And
Yeah.
for anyone who listening, like, for real, for
Yeah.
real, parents are calling interviewers, parents are calling bosses and saying why their kids are like not coming in today. These children are fully able to call. They are not incapacitated and unable to call. They're just ill equipped. So I just realized that all these parents think they're doing the right thing by like saving them and helping them and like checking their stuff every day and the software or whatever, which is wonderful that we have access to that. But like, if you use it and you're spending more time on it than your kid, like Houston, we have a problem.
I can attest because I did it.
Yeah.
And Houston, I had a problem. Well, and I think though, what I would also say for us moms that are doing that is one, it's okay. Like we talk about all the time. Like this isn't about a shame thing. This is
Oh
about
gosh,
the
no.
intentionality of what you want for your kid. So for me,
Yes.
it was like I was so focused, I think from a perspective place, I was so focused on what it looked like and what
Yes,
I
we talked about
thought
it
was
all the
going to
time.
happen, right? Like,
Yes.
well, he's not going to get into college or like, and then all of a sudden you've catastrophized and gone from some small incident to making it like this big thing. Because let's all be honest, we also know tons of people whose kids have gotten like the most APAs and they're in every activity and they don't get into the colleges they want. I mean, they get into college. So
Correct.
like, again, the catastrophizing is a whole other issue. But I think just from a perspective shift for me, it was, wait a minute, what am I actually teaching him in this process? And like, does that outweigh what the consequence might potentially be? Like, if he fails right now, if he fails in middle school, what is the consequence? Well, in our state, they'll just keep passing him, I'm sure. Like, that's not even that's a whole other issue with the
Yeah.
education system. But,
Right.
but
But what will happen? But that's the question, right? Like,
yes,
what realistically,
yes,
and is he going to fail the class? No, but he has to see himself failing in order to see it with his own eyes, to realize his actions without mom yapping,
yes,
as you said, my own choices have led to me having a D or a C or an
yes.
F or whatever, and I've missed turning in this homework or whatever, right? Then they can see it with their own eyes. Like, that's the other thing. Like, you're not even letting your kids see what happens. You're just telling them. So are you just going to tell them what's going to happen for the rest of their life?
Well, and to me, it's creating that toolbox for them, right? Or what you were saying with your
Yes.
daughter of feeling like they can overcome their failure. Because if they never
Yes.
get the opportunity or have the toolbox of being able to say,
Yes.
oh, or to know, like, so now I think the difference, the shift for me, the perspective shift that is also going to empower myself and my kid is I'm here to support him. And part of
Yes.
supporting him is creating this toolbox and letting him fail. Or if he wants to be better at this sport, you got to do more. But that's
Yeah.
your choice. And if you want to get better in your job, or you want to have a better relationship with your spouse or partner or kids or whatever, like, you have to put in work. Like, it just is
Yes.
not going to just miraculously come to you. And
Yes.
FYI, and I would actually say this would be my lesson from all of this, was
Yeah.
I'm teaching my kid that perfection is not necessary.
Yes.
And coming from a little perfectionist over here, a recovering perfectionist, I want that so bad for them. I don't want him to have that habit that if he's not perfect, that he should just be all or nothing. So, like, if I'm
Yes.
failing, just I'm done. Or mom, you need to fix it. Like, hands up, I'm done.
Mhm.
Like, now it's like,
Yes.
no, 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 this is
Yeah.
life. Welcome.
And for me, I felt so powerless for so long that I don't want, so that was
Yeah.
so funny because I was coming from a place of powerlessness of like, no, you, and also I want my kids to know, like, I believe in you.
Yeah.
You are
Mm,
capable. Like, you are all these things, and these grades don't define you, but your effort does define you.
yeah.
How you deal with things does define you. Like, you can't always control what happens to you, but you can always control to how you react. So, from my standpoint, I'm like, I'm teaching you how to react. I'm teaching you what to say. I'm teaching you. And yeah, of course, there was far more coaching in the beginning of like, what am I going to say to her? What if she says this? Right. But like, that's what we say to like our friends till this day. I just turned 50 and I'm like calling you going, okay, well, I have to have this uncomfortable
Yeah.
conversation. Like, what do you, I mean, that's part of having people in your life to bounce ideas off of. Like,
But that's
and
problem
it's,
solving.
yes,
That's
problem
what it is.
solving. Yes. And so, and then she accomplishes it. And whether she gets her way or doesn't get her way, if you will, A, it doesn't define her. It doesn't make her a failure. So she doesn't even see, like, she just had this epiphany of, like, oh, I guess I'm just not scared of failing. And then had the panic of, like, wait, aren't I supposed to be scared of failing? Right. Like, so she was looking at me like, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And I was so excited because, as we always say, it's working. Like, oh my gosh, it's working.
It's really working.
Like she can have conversations later in, now she can have difficult conversations where she feels her heart beating fast and her stomach full of butterflies because let's face it, every kind of conversation you have to have where you need something from someone can feel like that. So it's
Yeah.
not just about school. It's about, having the conversation with the coach. Like we used to say the same thing about coaches. Like, oh no, you want more playtime. You want to know why you're not playing this position.
Yep.
Like you have to have like, we'll wait, like I'd always say, like, hey, I'll wait in the car if you want to wait till all the girls leave or you need to have a conversation with your coach or whatever. Like, again, I'm here to support you. No matter what happens, I'm here for you. No matter if you quote unquote fail or, get your way, I'm here for you. Like, if we need to have another conversation, I'm here for you. But other than that, like, I'm only getting involved if things are toxic, if someone's done something wrong to you, like truly,
Sure.
but other than that, like, sister, you're learning your own stuff. And we already started that with our son in his grades. And we're like hands off. And he is a very different soul. And, much to
Yeah.
like your son, like he's like, yeah, I just didn't turn that in because it just seemed like a dumb assignment. And I was like, oh, how'd that go for you?
Yeah. Not like
Wow, now
you
you
have
have
to turn it back in.
yeah,
And that's what
no,
you realize. Like, when I was pushing for that, I was like, I was pushing perfectionism. That was not him. It wasn't going to exist.
yeah,
But the quote I heard that I thought, and I've used it a ton in my own like brain when I'm trying to shift my perspective, is failure is part of success.
yes,
And that
yes,
has just helped, like, it reminds me, because if success is something that is important to me and important that I want my kids to have, to
hmm,
know that failure is part of that process is helpful
yes,
for me. And now I'm mimicking that and telling my kids that. And when he did, by the way, course correct, it was like, oh, and he came to me and he's like, yeah, mom, I figured it out. Like, I'm good. I'm
yes,
good. And I was like, yeah, because that failure now became part of your success story. And I remember him being like, oh,
hmm,
yeah. That
yeah,
little
yeah,
light. And you're like,
failure,
it's
yeah,
working.
it's working. Yeah, and I think that was part of like basically my takeaways from the whole thing was it's working. Like let's just start there. It's working because we need our wins as moms and to empowering them to do all these things is going to like she's so much more successful in my mind than I ever was specifically at her age because she's so empowered to take on things herself. And she's so equipped with the tools to have conversations, and she doesn't view failure as a bad thing. You know, she'll try new things. And so I just see her like so far along, and I'm so excited to do it with my son. And we can already see just from starting, because he's in 5th grade, but starting to make him responsible for his own grades and his own homework and his own things. And like, yes, we have a check-in, right? Because there's the gradual, the weaning process, if you will.
Sure.
But we already saw like a huge turnaround with him. I hear so much of parents not letting their kids fail, and they think they're doing them a service. And then the reality, they're actually doing them a disservice. And I just want more moms to just think like, hey, is this actually helping them? Or is this about me wanting perfectionism or me not wanting them to fail? Or like, what's actually going on here? Instead of just going with our knee jerk reaction, like, that's it, I'm calling the teacher.
Yeah, and I think in wrapping up that's the great question for our friend listening right now is there any place right now that you can think of that you are trying to save your kid from failing?
Mm-hmm.
Just think
Yes.
about it. So, well, that's it for today.
I hope you heard something in my story that helped you.
See you next time. Same place, same sisterhood. Bye.
Bye.